I am a clinical prosthetist with PROTEOR and also the manager of product development and strategy. Joining you today, you have the pleasure of getting a course from one of our other clinical prosthetists and the global leader of our ankle franchise, as well as all clinical communications. So this is Sarah Stilley, and she, if it sounds like from her title that she is the knower of all things, she kind of is. So you are in luck. Thanks for joining us for the last PROTEOR Training Center interactive webinar of the year, where we're going to talk a little bit more about the Quattro. If you could, because this is only an hour, if you could hold your comments or questions till the end, feel free to fill them in the chat, and I am going to just hang out and make sure that we don't miss anything. But other than that, you'll be on mute, and Sarah's just going to go through the content, and we will work to tackle all of those questions at the end. One last thing about CEUs. You will get 1.25 CEUs for doing this training course if you complete the quiz. There will be a QR code at the end that you can take a picture of and follow. You'll also be receiving it in an email after you finish. So either way, if you need credits, you can get 1.25 for attending today and taking the quiz. If you are interested in VOC credits or licensing credits, if you send an email requesting a copy of the certificate, we can send that your way as well. Thanks for joining us. And all right, without further ado, take it away, Sarah.
Perfect. Thank you, Steph. I appreciate it. And thank you everyone for your time today. We super appreciate you coming in to learn about the Quattro with us, an entirely new walking experience. So we'll go ahead and get started with the presentation. So just so you guys know, the Quattro is an addition to the PROTEOR USA Microprocessor Portfolio. So it's not replacing anything. It's actually coming in to help enhance the microprocessor controlled products that we already have. So you'll see here, we'll talk about today the Quattro microprocessor knee. We do still have the Freedom Plie 3 microprocessor knee that you guys may be familiar with. Also the Alex 2, it is the only 4-bar microprocessor knee available. So we have that as well. And just to remind you, we do also have the Freedom Connects 2.0. So that's our microprocessor controlled ankle. So we have a full microprocessor portfolio now, and we're excited to talk to you today about the newest edition of the Quattro. So we'll start off with kind of a background on the Quattro. It's really for your low, moderate, and high K3 users. You see, this is a poster here. We have all of these that will come up are posters that are available for you. So if you would like a poster, please contact us. We'd be happy to send you one. So the first one here, we have Andre. He's a community health coordinator. He says, I live a very active lifestyle. I'm a triathlete and a dad. It is really important that I have a knee that keeps up with me, whether hiking, playing, or playing with my kid, biking, or at the beach with the family, the Quattro performs. It's there when I need it. It's safe, intuitive, and customized for me. I feel confident with Quattro. And one thing that we always heard when we were out testing the Quattro is the knee walks like me. I walk like Andre, not the other way around. So you'll kind of see that theme throughout the presentation. Next, we have Brenda. She's kind of more of our moderate K3 user. She's actually an Argentine tango dancer, which is gorgeous. If you go to freedomquattro.com, you can actually see a video of her doing that Argentine tango on the Quattro. It's really beautiful. She says, when I dance with the Quattro, I feel both feet on the ground. I feel the proprioception coming out of the ground, and I feel every step I take is effortless. I just glide. I feel comfortable. It has the security I am looking for in a knee. It allows me to do moves most people would not believe I could do. And again, that's another poster if you like Brenda's. And last but not least, we have Jack. He's maybe a little bit more of our lower K3 user. He's a retired lawyer and a professor at a college in California. He says, I spend a lot of time on the golf course and traveling with my wife. Quattro allows me to do all that with greater ease, comfort, and confidence. The golf mode helps my golf game substantially, which we'll talk about. It allows me to be able to put it into a preset fixed position. And when I shift my weight, I don't worry about losing my balance. From walking up and down slopes to getting in and out of a car, the transitions are seamless. So let's take a look at the Quattro and what it does to help everybody with this entirely new walking experience. So the Quattro has some sensors that we'll get into more depth in a little bit, but the sensors sample at 250 hertz. So that's 250 times a second. So the things that really give the Quattro this entirely new walking experience is the speed of the data capture. So that 250 times a second sample rate from the 3 sensors we'll talk about. The speed of the data processing, so the control system processing of the algorithm or the interpretation of the info is twice as fast as any of the microprocessor knees on the market now. And add that to the customized and continuous valve response. So there's a constant change in the valve. There's no preset positions. So the valve can go to any change any, diameter that is needed depending on what the patient is doing at the time. So all of this adds up to a new walking experience for all users. This is the intuitive response that we talk about. It feels natural and I walk like me. So how is it an entirely new walking experience for your low K3 users? So that high sampling rate or resolution that we talked about provides an immediate response to changes in gait speed and direction. So the Quattro knows immediately, like in less than a second, because it's sampling 250 times a second, right? It knows immediately if you change your gait speed and if you change the direction that you're walking. So this provides that intuitive feeling for the user and allows the user to concentrate less on navigating the terrain and more on their surroundings. I know a lot of the times with our patients, we have to remind them to look up. You know, you always tend to look at the ground and see where you're going to go. But with this safety of this knee, you can look up, you can look around, you can see where you're going and look at your surroundings more. So this helps your low K3 users with increased confidence to participate in their everyday life. And it also has a very advanced customized stumble recovery. So we'll kind of go over the stumble recovery a little bit more, but for your low K3 users, that's especially relevant to them. Another thing that's huge for your low K3 users is the independent stair and ramp resistance. So this improves their confidence when navigating stairs and ramps by providing higher levels of resistance independent of the sitting resistance. So this way you don't have to find that compromise between, well, it's a little fast on the stairs, but it's a little slow when I'm sitting. You can actually customize it so that they feel comfortable getting used to riding that hydraulic resistance down the stairs. So you can have it as high as you want or, whatever they need, but you don't have to worry that it's going to be too slow and put too much weight on the other residual limb during sitting. We also have a stance lock, which we'll go into a little bit more, but it provides stability in preventing flexion when required. So you see Brenda here on the right, she's kind of stooping down to water the plants, and the Quattro is automatically locked in that stance flexion angle for her. And this feature can actually be enabled or disabled based on your patient's need. So if your patient doesn't want the stance lock, they can turn it off. But if they do want it, they can turn it on. Another feature good for your low K3s is the sitting mode. So that is a low flexion and extension resistance when seated. And that's really great for getting in and out of a car. So there's no hydraulic resistance when they're trying to get into the car, and they don't have to fight that when getting positioned there. For your moderate K3 users, the first things are kind of going to be the same. So the immediate response to changes in gait speed and direction, intuitive feeling for the user. They don't have to change what they're doing because the knee is behaving a certain way. The knee behaves the way that they need it, no matter what they're doing. So this helps them with, again, looking up, looking around, and increased confidence to traverse varying surfaces and to participate in recreational activities, either recreational activities they were doing before or something new that they want to try. And again, your advanced customized stumble recovery is going to be important for your moderate K3 users as well. And also we spoke about that independent stair and ramp resistance. So again, there's no need to compromise here. You can get the ideal resistance this patient needs going down stairs and ramps, and also the ideal resistance when they're sitting, so you don't have to compromise between the two. The Quattro also has 18 programmable activity modes, which are optional. You don't have to do all 18, and also cycling and golf activity modes. So this allows the user to have the custom settings for various recreational activities, like we talked about earlier. And the user has the ability to fine tune these adjustments as well, as long as you as the CP feel comfortable allowing them to do that. Quattro is also IP67 ingress protection rated. So that means that it is fully submersible in water. It's not just splash proof, they can submerge it. So this allows them to participate in daily activities like washing the car or some recreational activities that they have without worrying about the microprocessor being affected by water ingress. Also, you have activity monitoring. We'll go into that a little bit more with your usage and cadence reports. I know people really like to see how many steps they've taken that day. You can see with the usage report how many times they've gone down stairs and ramps. Cadence report has how many steps they've taken at each of these 3 cadences. So it's really fun for some patients to be able to look again at their step counts and how they've been using it since they're fitting. And for your high K3 users, again, the first ones are kind of going to be the same. So your high K3 users are going to maybe having a higher range of gait speeds that they're in. So the knee can adapt to that as well. So they're still getting that intuitive feeling for the user. Again, concentrate less on where they're walking and more on where they're going. Also, with this high sampling rate and with the valve that we'll talk about, they can effortlessly go from walking to jogging to running and back and anywhere in between. So this can give them some increased confidence to participate in recreational activities and sports, and we still have your advanced customized stumble recovery. Again, your independent stair and ramp resistance, so no compromise between sittings resistance and stair resistance. Your 18 programmable activity modes, including cycling and golf. So custom settings for their various activities, recreational activities, sports is all available to them, which can be fine-tuned as well. Again, your IP67 ingress protection rating for water and dust, and your activity monitoring. So again, you can monitor your step count from the time that you were fit, and daily, you can reset it whenever, and then your usage reports that tell you a little bit more detail of how you've been using the knee. So with the Quattro, we have solutions for every K3. So we have feet that are available. It's not required to fit the Quattro with one of PROTEOR USA's feet, but we do have really great solutions for them. So your high K3, you can pair the Quattro with a Rush Rogue 2, which is new, and the new Freedom Shockwave. Your moderate K3s will do well with your Cont'd ankles or the Kinax microprocessor ankle, and your low K3s have your classic Freedom Highlander, or again, the Cont'd. So this is not everything that you can fit with it, but just kind of a suggestion of solutions for every K3. Woo. So if you haven't heard yet, we have 2 new PDAC verified vertical shock feet, verified for 5987 and 5984. On the left, you'll see the Freedom Shockwave with the spherical shock unit, or SSU, for vertical shock relief, and it gets plus or minus axial rotation from neutral of 15 degrees. This one, the foot module, is the EnduraCore composite technology. If you're not familiar with that, that is Freedom's legacy composite of a mixture of carbon fiber and fiberglass. So you get the best of both worlds there. It is available in regular toe and sandal toe for that one. For the Rush Rogue 2, it has the vertical shock unit, and it also has the plus or minus 15 degrees of axial rotation from neutral. It is the classic Rush foot design in fiberglass, and it is available in a regular toe. What's cool about the Rush Rogue 2 is it's also PDAC verified and available for the Evacuate collection. So that provides a mechanical vacuum through the foot into the socket. So that's PDAC verified, and also the Rush H2O. If you're not familiar with that, you don't actually need to use a foot shell with that. It has a Vibram sole on it. So for any sports, water sports is really great, or things like yoga. You just don't want to use it for really high activities like hiking or something that's really going to wear that sole away. So we're excited about that. And we actually have some really great solution bundles for you. Speaking of, you know, a knee for every K3 and a foot for every patient that you need. We have 3 different categories of solution bundles right now. So you have the 81 combo, which is the Quattro and the Highlander. And with all of these, you also get a tube clamp and a pylon as well. So the 81 combo is either the Highlander or the Pacifica or Pacifica LP. Your 87 combo is your Rush Rogue 2 or the Shockwave. Then for your ankle bundle, we have the Quattro with the Kinects microprocessor ankle or the Cont'd mechanical ankle. So those are kind of just some exciting solution bundles for you that we're offering until the end of the year. So now let's kind of get into the nuts and bolts of Quattro, okay? Some key features and benefits for your prosthetist, so for you guys. So the programming is completely app-based, so you don't need to drag your laptop around anymore, and it's available on iOS and Android platforms. You have outcome measures actually built into the app, which we'll talk about a little bit more, but that's super exciting for your verified outcome measures in there. You have the remote data reporting, which we kind of touched on with your usage reports and your cadence reports. The patient can actually send those to you by email. So you don't have to be present to download that from the knee. They can actually email that report to you so you can kind of monitor how they're doing. It has a field replaceable kneecap, so you don't need to send it in if the only thing wrong is that that kneecap on the front is a little bit torn up. That is covered under warranty. We can send you one to replace that in the field. If you do happen to need a loaner, we do have easy settings transfers. You just copy it from the knee and then paste it into the loaner. It does come with a, excuse me, 36-month warranty, so 3-year bumper-to-bumper warranty. There is also a 2-year warranty extension available within the first year of purchase. And there is no service interval requirement for that 36-month warranty. So if nothing's wrong in those 3 years, you don't need to send it in, still under warranty. You have your US-based manufacturing and repair. So the Quattro and also the Kinects are manufactured and repaired in Irvine, California. So you don't need to wait on any overseas shipping to get loaners or to get your repairs back. So shifting over to patients, the Quattro also has a patient app, which we'll talk about a little bit more, available on iOS and Android. But if your patient doesn't have a smartphone, or maybe doesn't have it with them, or doesn't feel like getting it out of their pocket, there's also keypad functionality. So a smart device is not required for the use of the Quattro. Again, it is fully submersible at the IP67, and your independent resistance for stairs, ramps, and sitting has really been a highlight of this knee. Another thing that's cool is adjustable power off performance. So if the battery does happen to die, you can change how it performs based on the patient's activity level and weight and how it feels to them. We kind of touched on the multiple modes and convenience features, which we'll go into a little bit more. And we also have a battery booster pack available. So this is kind of like a brick like you have for your cell phone that you just charge that and take it with you. And then you can plug the knee into that if you need, if you're going camping or anything like that. So just kind of an overview on patient selection, and we went through it a little bit with your low, moderate, and high K3 kind of things that we said, but it's really good for all K3 and K4 patients, low, moderate, and high, which we kind of went through. Also for someone that has a low build height requirement. So this is the lowest build height microprocessor knee on the market right now. Also, we kind of talked about someone that desires a knee that walks with them, not for them. So I walk like me. It has intuitive operation So really the patient just has to walk and do their activities and it will keep up with them. Again, your fall prevention with the automatic stumble recovery parameters, which we'll go into a little bit more detail with here in a second. This is also good for someone that participates in multiple activities. We talked about the modes, the cycling mode, the golf mode. So you can have it easily already adjusted for whatever activity you're going to do. Also, I know some people really like to be able to play with the knee a little bit, right? So if they desire the ability to make their own adjustments, the Quattro is really great for that. Also, someone that desires to monitor their own activities. So we kind of touched on the step count, the cadence report, and the usage report. And again, those two reports can be sent to you remotely from the patient. Just some basic specs for Quattro. The product weight itself is 3.65 pounds with a user weight limit of 300 pounds. Full flexion angle is 135 degrees, which we really got some good feedback on that as well for that range of motion, the ease of being able to kneel and get back up from kneeling. So that's a really big highlight as well. Again, your build height is 8.5 inches, so the shortest microprocessor knee on the market. Your battery life from a full charge is about 2 to 3 days, depending on the usage of the patient. So that 8.5 inches is build height. For a pyramid top, there's a threaded top available as well that will save you that socket adapter height. It just has the threaded top that goes right into the socket. So it does have those 20 optional modes, 18 of which of those are programmable. Your IP67 rating, so that's water submersion at 1 meter for 30 minutes. And also complete dust protection. Again, your 36-month warranty is included with no service interval, and a 2-month warranty extension is a 2-year warranty extension is available as well. So this is kind of a Quattro 360, just kind of taking a look at it from all the sides. In the front, you can see that there is the keypad that we talked about. So there's the 3 buttons there on the front. And if you look at it from the back, they're all the way on the right. This little flap here towards the distal end is the charging port. So it is a magnetic charger that goes there in the back of the knee. And the first thing that you might notice is that the hydraulic cylinder is not in the center. We did that on purpose. So there's an accumulator that goes with the hydraulic cylinder that usually runs in line with it, but we were actually able to move it to be beside it. So that's what allows the knee to be such a short build height, is that accumulator being able to be moved to the side. So don't worry about it feeling unbalanced, because we did a really good job of making sure that you don't feel that any of that during swing. So it is actually really well balanced, even though when you look at it, the cylinder is a little bit on the side. So we kind of touched on this earlier with the three things we listed for what makes this an entirely new walking experience is really the heart control technology. So it's the heart of the Quattro. So why do patients say Quattro feels smooth and I walk like me? It's the hyperactive real-time control technology, which is a patented technology. So it cannot be reproduced in the prosthetic space. So it's the first and only one. It was over 5 years in development. And again, the first and only of its kind in the prosthetic industry. It is patented and continuous valve adjustments without your preset positions. So the knee can be at whatever diameter or hydraulic resistance the patient requires at that time, between fully open to fully closed and anywhere in between. So the way I think about this is like if you're going to be cooking. So traditional prosthetic technology is kind of like the, my vent fan is above my stove, and it can just be on, low, medium, or high. And you kind of get like a clunk in between each one. And those are the only ones that you can pick. You cannot go in between that. Low, medium, high, off, that's it. Whereas the Quattro is more like my stove. So when I go to turn the stove on, it turns on and it has the markings for, you know, low, medium, high, all of that. but I can go anywhere in between on that spectrum. So anywhere from completely off to super extra high, I can go, and it's just a smooth transition between all of those. So that's how I think of that heart control and the valve, is it can pick anything that you want, anything that they need, and it knows that quickly because of that 250 hertz sampling time. Okay, hopefully that made sense. So this heart control technology really applies across all microprocessor controlled functionalities of the Quattro. So it applies to the sensors and the processing speed that we talked about, swing and stance initiation, and also your stumble recovery. So a little more into the sensors and processing speed. I mentioned it has 3 sensors. The first is your angle sensor. So that looks at the angle of the knee flexion and how quickly that angle is changing. You have your load and torque sensor in the distal pyramid, and that looks at the amount of load on the knee and in what direction it's being loaded. Then you have your IMU. It looks at acceleration and orientation sensors. So that's your inertial measurement unit, IMU. So that looks at where in gait the patient is. And this is how it also knows if they're going backwards, if they're going forwards, and if they're going downstairs and ramps, or if they're sitting. So this is the big thing that let us get that independent resistances to stairs and ramps versus sitting, is it knows what you're doing. Again, your processing speed, it makes changes based on the knee user's activity. Again, samples at 250 times per second, and it has the real-time continuous valve adjustment at 5 milliseconds, so 0.005 seconds. And that valve adjustment speed is actually faster than biological speed. So it's actually faster than it takes from your brain to think what you want to do and do it. And that, again, at 5 milliseconds is 2 times faster than comparable microprocessor knees on the market today. All right, let's take a look at the advanced stumble recovery. So to initiate stumble recovery, one of those sensors that we just talked about detects an unexpected value during any phase of gait. So this can be stance phase, swing phase, anything in between. And the appropriate valve resistance is determined by the angle of the knee, and that is different depending on the patient's weight, how fast they were walking, how much the knee was flexed, how quickly it's changing that flexion angle again. So it actually customizes the appropriate valve resistance for every stumble that they might encounter to allow the patient to be able to catch themselves. So that's what we mean by advanced customized stumble recovery. So it's customized for every person and also customized for every stumble. Of course, we don't want them to, but if it happens, it's customized. Then once the knee signals return to acceptable and expected levels, the knee automatically returns to that normal function. And while we were doing the development of the Quattro, we did an IRB study. If you're not familiar with that, it's an institutional review board study. So it does have to be approved by this board. They have to make sure that it's safe and relevant for us to complete. We did have 8 subjects. And what happened was they came in on their current prosthesis and did 22 functional tasks. And after they did each task, they rated the difficulty of that task between 1 and 9. So 1 is easy, 9 is hard, anywhere in between. So then they wore the Quattro for 30 days while still wearing the same foot. So we did that so that we would know that anything that we saw change in the ratings of the tasks would be due to the knee, the Quattro, not due to changing the foot as well. So after they wore the Quattro for 30 days, they came back and repeated the same 22 functional tasks on the Quattro and rated the difficulty of those tasks between 1 and 9. So some statistically significant results is that the subjects rated the Quattro easier to perform these tasks. So walking backwards, walking sideways, walking over an obstacle 6 inches in height, and kneeling on the prosthesis and standing back up, and swinging a golf club. So swinging a golf club might sound like, okay, not everybody plays golf. Why does that matter? But if you think about swinging a golf club, it's really a multiplanar movement. So you're having to move in all different planes and really feel stable and secure as you bring the club behind you, swing it through to the other side. So it really is a cool thing to see that swinging a golf club got easier with the Quattro. So you should be seeing those coming out in a study here pretty soon. Your recommended L codes for Quattro, you have 6 of them that are PDAC verified. So 5856, 5828, 5848, 5845, 5850, and 5925. So you have your knee extension assist and the manual lock in addition to kind of the regular 4. We also just partnered with O&P Insight in coding and reimbursement support. So this is a new service that we're offering. If you're not familiar with O&P Insights, it's run by Leslie Sisson. She's been doing this for a long time. She's a consultant that has her own business, O&P Insight, and they will help you not only for Quattro, but for any PROTEOR product that you need help with. If you're looking for documentation preparation review, audit appeal and management, they can review your prior authorization submissions and also response to a denial. So they're really great. We're really excited to be partnering with them on this. You can either call them at that 855 number, go to PROTEORUSA.com/reimbursement, or you can shoot them an email at cnrsupport@PROTEORUSA.com. And they will be available to help you with, again, any product that you're looking for coding and reimbursement support. Okay, so let's get into programming. So the Prosthetist app for Quattro and Connects is the Freedom GaitLab app by PROTEOR. Just make sure when you search for it that you do GaitLab as one word, and that should come up either in the Apple App Store or the Google Play Store. When you download it, just make sure that you enable access to Bluetooth to allow it to find and connect to the Quattro, and also cellular data, which allows emailing of the reports that we talked about. You do need to authorize it the first time. So it will come in a card in the box. We'll have your authorization code. But after you authorize it one time, as long as you don't unauthorize it, you don't need to authorize it every time you connect to a Quattro. The other thing that's really cool is it has a demo mode. If you see all the way down here at the bottom of the list, it says demo. You can actually go through the whole setup and GaitLab of the Quattro without having to be connected to one. So if you guys want, you can go ahead and get on your preferred iOS or Android store and go ahead and type in that GaitLab as one word and get that downloaded. Because then you can kind of look at the demo mode and you can go through this with us if you want. The other thing I want to point out is the outcome measures. So if you look in the second kind of little tab there, it'll say outcomes. And for this, it's all tested and validated outcome measures. So you see you have your plus M, the 7 item and the 12 item. You have your timed up and go or the tug, and you have your activities balance confidence scale or ABC. So the patient can fill any of those out. And you don't have to be connected to a Quattro to do these. So no Quattro, no problem. You can use the app to easily administer any of these tests for any patient and save it to their chart. So maybe you have a patient you're going to do an AFO on, and you want to do a timed up and go with and without the AFO. Well, you can just easily bring up your GaitLab app. It'll walk you through the tug, and then you can email that to yourself so you can keep it in the patient's chart. We saw that already. So once you connect to the Quattro, you will get to this setup page, and you'll tap, if you'll see here, some of these are grayed out because until you go through a full setup, you can't go back to each one of the individual ones. But once you complete the full setup, then you can go back and visit each one of these separately. So you go ahead and tap full setup, and it will guide you through bench alignment, static alignment, sensor calibration, resistance adjustments, and dead battery demonstration. So to do that, you just go ahead and hit begin. Just a little note on a bench and static alignment. It can be aligned with or without stance flexion at heel strike. So depending on if your patient wants to walk with stance flexion at heel strike or not, it can be aligned for either one of those opportunities. And static alignment, when you go through it, it actually shows a live weight line. So you can see it's kind of changing. So as the patient's weight line shifts, it's kind of showing you in real time where that is. And I kind of skipped over this, but for your bench alignment, when you do full flexion of your Quattro, if there is contact between this rear brace here, you can see with the arrows pointing to it. If there is contact between the socket and that rear brace in full flexion, it is acceptable and will not cause damage or void the warranty. So we purposely kind of built that up there so that you guys didn't have to worry about it. Next, you go through calibration. So step one is unweighted, and that's looking at the minimum for the load and torque sensors to kind of have the patient stand there with the knee fully extended and just kind of out to the side. Step two is going to be the knee fully weighted. So that is looking at the maximum for the load sensor. So if you look at kind of the picture on the screen, you want to make sure that they're standing up straight, look straight ahead, make sure that that weight line is centered between the heel and the toe. So kind of right down the middle of the pylon, and also make sure that they're not putting too much weight through their arms on the parallel bars. They can obviously use it for some kind of balance and support, but you don't want to kind of load all of the weight through it. And then step three is going to be walking with a locked knee. And that's looking to get the maximum for the torque sensor. So obviously for calibration, we're calibrating it for each of the patients. Just a little note on unloaded calibration. If you fit a lot of pliés, you might be tempted to have the patient hold the knee out in front of them, but that actually adds torque. You know, we're looking at the minimum for the torque and load sensors. That actually adds torque to it. So we don't want to do that. You want to make sure that the knee is fully straight and kind of extend it out beside them, as you see in the second picture. Again, for your loaded calibration, really make sure that the patient is doing kind of what's in the middle. Make sure standing straight up, just touch for balance on the bars. Your weight line is where you want it to be kind of for the foot. You really don't want them to be leaning forward or putting a ton of weight through the bars, because that's going to mess up your calibration. It's okay if they lean back just a little bit. That's not going to do as much, but just make sure that they're not leaning forward and not putting a ton of weight through the bars. Next, you go to your resistance adjustments. So higher numbers here equals more resistance to that movement. Okay, so if you look at sitting resistance, again, this is resistance during sitting only. So the higher that is, the more the resistance is to sitting, the lower it is, the lower it is. You can see you can use you can swipe it with your finger to change the resistance, or for more fine tuning, you can use the plus or minus sign next to the slider. So for heel rise resistance, again, higher resistance equals less heel rise. And swing extension resistance is resistance to swing extension, and that helps you eliminate your terminal impact. Okay. So there was more that we could fit on that slide. So this is kind of the second route of the resistance adjustments. So next is your stance extension resistance, which is resistance to knee extension during weight bearing. Generally, we only adjust this during stance flexion if they're walking with stance flexion alignment. Next, again, is your independent stair and ramp resistance. So you can set that independent of what the sitting resistance is. I think I've probably talked about that enough by now. And finally, down here at the bottom, you see your obstacle assist. So it's just a slider that turns on or off. You'll kind of see it at the end of this video. If you slide it to on, it will be green. And if the patient's thigh angle reaches at or over 35 degrees from vertical, then it flexes with no hydraulic resistance. So you kind of have that shank drop down to no hydraulic resistance. If you turn it off, then there's hydraulic resistance to flexion when unweighted, independent of the thigh angle. So that's kind of more like how the plie would behave. Just has hydraulic resistance independent of thigh angle. You saw that. Next, you go to your demonstrations. So first one is your power off adjustment. So again, that is the resistance that the knee will have during dead battery and is adjusted with a 3mm wrench. So it won't be completely stiff. They'll still be able to bend the knee while they're walking, and you can actually adjust how much that is. So if you want to do that, you turn it on, and then it will kind of tell you about the power off behavior. Clockwise adjustments will be more flexion resistance. Counterclockwise will be less flexion resistance. And the last screen that you'll see is adjust. And that allows the patient to make adjustments and add activities in their app. So you can turn that off or on depending on if you're comfortable with that. And that is it. Your setup is complete. So once you decide what you want to do with Adjust, if you see it comes to this setup screen, you remember when we started the full setup, some things were grayed out, but now we can go back and revisit any one of those steps that we want to. Next, along the bottom, you can go to activities. So just a reminder that making changes in activities does not change walking settings. So walking settings stay the same. You can turn on pre-programmed activities. It has basketball, jogging, running, and tennis. And walking is the only activity that's automatically enabled. So you have to enable all of the other ones. So when you add a new activity, it will copy what you have set up as the walking settings. And just so you know, with basketball, jogging, and running, those start off at factory settings because we had wanted to kind of get recommended settings for each one of those activities, but everyone is so different and wants the need to behave so differently. We just start them at factory settings. But if you add a new activity, that copies your walking settings. Next, we have golf mode. So golf mode has 3 adjustable flexion angles. So you can select which one and you can change how much you want each one to be. And so the knee will lock at that angle, allows full extension, then only allows flexion back to that selected flexion angle. So it's available between 0 and 90 degrees. And you'll also see down there at the bottom, the minimum lock time. That's the minimum amount of time that the lock remains engaged after the patient weights it. We kind of did that because we saw that people have their little golf waggle, you know, and while they're shifting their weight a little bit, if you go past that flexion angle, then it won't lock it there. So you can kind of play with that minimum lock time. And all of the other settings are the same as walking. And even though we called it golf mode, it's not just for golfing. So we have people that use it for kettlebells. Andre specifically uses it for kettlebells. Denise uses it for stand-up paddleboard. Anything that you want to have that selected knee angle that they can kind of rest against, but still come up to a full flexion and have just that set range of flexion for their activity. Next is cycling mode. The cycling mode is enabled when the thigh reaches or exceeds 70 degrees of flexion from vertical, the knee flexes without hydraulic resistance and stays at free swing during cycling. So to disable it out of that cycling mode, when it reaches full extension and is weighted, it returns to walking function automatically. And there are no additional adjustments. That's just what it does. Next, along the bottom, you'll see your tools tab. So this has your flexion lock, which locks flexion at any angle. This acts like a ratchet lock. So unlike the golf mode, which allowed you to go to full extension and back to the flexion angle, flexion lock locks the flexion at that angle, and you can kind of ratchet up to full extension, but it won't let you go back to that original flexion angle. You can turn sitting mode on and off. So that is when the thigh reaches 90 degrees or more, it will drop down. And this is also where you find your cadence report and your usage reports. Under that, you'll see my contact info. So you can put your contact info in there. So if you want the patient to be able to email you those reports easily, it'll already have your name and your email address and everything already filled in. If you don't fill that in, they'll just fill that in themselves when they want to send you the report. And also any firmware updates. So you don't need to send the knee in for firmware updates. It will pop up and let you know that those are available and you can update it from your app. Next along the bottom is your status tab and your help tab. So at the top, you'll see it has the serial number. You can actually change that, the top one, by hitting that little button. So you can change it to left or right or whatever you need. Total steps is steps since fitting. And then you have your resettable step counter. So you can reset that step counter anytime. Also, there's the help tab. It's going a little fast. There's the help tab. So that gives you the PROTEOR USA contact number and also links to the PROTEOR USA website. Convenience features that we talked about, we touched on the stance lock. So it automatically locks further flexion, but allows extension. So we talked about Brenda over here kind of bending down to water the flowers. So the patient just needs to hold the thigh at the desired angle, and it stays locked to further flexion until unweighted or the thigh goes into an extension moment. And this stance lock, automatic stance lock, is available between 0 and 70 degrees of flexion. Okay. Next, we will talk about the patient app, which is the Freedom Innovations app by PROTEOR. When you search for this, again, in your App Store or your Google Play, please make sure that you write Freedom Innovations, 2 words. If you just write Freedom, it's not going to be in the top of the list. So please make sure that you search for Freedom Space Innovations. Again, enable access to your Bluetooth and cellular data. And the Freedom app also has a demo mode as well. So you can download that and go through and kind of play with everything that the patient can do. A lot of the things with the Freedom app are similar to what's in the GaitLab app we just went over, so I'm not going to do it step by step. It does have the activities tab that they can adjust their activities. So when you set an activity in your app, in the GaitLab app, if you've allowed them to, the patient can adjust that activity plus or minus 10 points from what you set it. So they don't have full adjustment to each one of those selections. They just have that plus or minus 10 points. If they leave your office and find that they need more adjustment than that, then they'll just need to come back to the office. You'll need to change your settings in the GaitLab app, send them off, and then they'll have, again, the plus or minus 10. They can add activities, which just copies walking, and then they have plus or minus 10 from walking if they add an activity. Also, they can set the alternate activity, and that's what you can switch to using the keypad, which is pretty cool. Unfortunately, we don't have time to go totally into that, but you can switch between activities using just the keypad. You don't have to have your phone. Tools tab, you have the flexion lock we talked about. Also, if you double press the middle button, the light will illuminate white, and that tells you that the flexion lock is on. So again, you don't have to use your phone to do that flexion lock. They have availability of turning sitting mode on and off. Also looking at their cadence and usage reports. So that's where they can send you those reports without having to come in the office. And also they can turn on notifications. So they can turn on app notifications. Also, if the battery is getting low, it will do like a pop-up notification, but they have to turn it on. And they can also turn on a pop-up notification that says the knee is now fully charged. Again, their status tab is very similar. They can customize the knee name. They have their lifetime steps and then the resettable step counter that they can reset daily, weekly, whatever they want to do. If they go to their help tab in the Freedom Innovations app, that directs them to contact you. Okay. Again, for accessories, you have your field replaceable kneecap. So if that kneecap in the front becomes all beat up, all you have to do is let us know. It is covered under that 3-year warranty. We'll send you out a new one and you can just replace it in the field. Again, your booster battery pack is available separately, and you can actually walk with this while charging. So with the Connect's booster battery pack, we do not recommend that you walk while charging, but the Quattro is fine. You can just slip it in your pocket, keep walking while you're charging. Also, this can be used as a primary charging source if you have a cosmetic cover. So just some reminders, it is PDAC verified for the 6 codes, 300-pound patient weight limit, shortest microprocessor knee build height. You have your app functionality for CP and patient apps in iOS and Android, but you also have the keypad control option, so a smartphone is not required. You have your automatic stance lock we talked about. Also the flexion lock, which is the one that you manually put on either using the phone or double pressing the middle button. That one's more like the ratchet lock. It is fully submersible at your IP67. You have your outcome measures in the app, not just for Quattro, whenever you want to do an outcome measure, and your usage and cadence reports. Again, super huge independent resistance for sitting versus stairs and ramps. Your multiple optional mode options, the replaceable knee pad, and the rear brace that it's okay for the socket to contact.